did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have?
I think we don't just notice as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
I'm going to put you in the back seat over here.
Hold on, Mum, to get the seat.
Okay, just take a seat in there for me, Lucy.
This was Lucy Letby's last day on the witness stand, during which the prosecution called the former neonatal nurse a liar and a murderer. The court was told about social media searches that Miss Letby had done whilst on shift at the Countess of Chester Hospital.
We should have acted faster on Letby, says new head of nursing watchdog. These are the words of Paul Rees. Rees was appointed head of the Nursing and Midwifery Council, the NMC, in July. Rees said the regulator should have suspended the child killer when she was first arrested. So why wasn't she? Instead, Letby was free to work as a nurse with no restrictions from the watchdog until she was charged more than 2 years later.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Now, my own investigation into the Letby case shocked and appalled me, and I have to say I'm still shocked and appalled. I'm not sure what is more shocking and appalling than someone convicted of, 7 murders and 7 attempted murders, who some folks either still feel is innocent, or simply because Lucy looks sweet and innocent, and simply because people, including some investigative reporters, court reporters, just because they can't wrap their head around motive, they feel she must be innocent. Now, according to ITV.com, Mr. Rees said the issue was that the guidance stated where nursing and midwifery or professionals did something outside of their working life, it was outside of our concerns. That was completely wrong. It should have been saying what you do outside of work is just as important as what you do at work. And I think this is also true of other professions such as pilots. Now, if you know this case, you know what that oblique reference is about.
The court has also been shown text messages that the nurse sent to colleagues saying that the ward they worked on was understaffed and unsafe. She's also suggested to the prosecution that raw sewage had gone on to one of the nursery wards where babies were being cared for. And there was also the suggestion from the prosecution about a possible motive. They say that Lucy Letby killed babies to attract the attention and sympathy of a male colleague on whom she had a crush.
So what was Lucy doing outside of her working life? Right? Well, it's about Lucy's alleged affair with a married doctor colleague. And I think if you doubt that she had an affair, and if you doubt she had feelings of any consequence for this doctor, then I think that's why this case makes no sense to you, because that means you don't know Lucy at all. And I think it's possible maybe she didn't consummate her relationship with this doctor. Maybe nothing physical actually happened. I think the bottom line, though, is did she have strong feelings towards this individual, yes or no? And I think the answer to that is very clear and very obvious. But if you can't see this, and if you, perhaps even if you can, but you still don't see this as playing into motive, I think you just don't know Lucy at all. And you wouldn't be the only one. One of the most disappointing analyses I think I read was this one from the BBC. What I learned about Lucy Letby after 10 months in court. 10 months. And so what did this writer learn in 10 months? Breathlessly sitting in on the entire trial, day after day, listening to Lucy's own testimony word for word. And then at one point, sitting right behind her, what did this writer learn from observing all of this? Well, in her own words, she says, can anyone make sense of it? I can't. And so the question is, did she learn a damn thing? It's crazy to me what a great piece of reporting this writer did in this and other articles. I'm not naming the writer because it's not about taking shots or scoring points. It's not personal. And yet it sort of is. If you can't look at what Lucy Letby did and understand it, that seems to show a lack of the ability to fathom another individual, which is quite sad. I mean, how can you be exposed to so much information, so much evidence, so much knowledge, and have so little intuition and have so little insight to put the psychological puzzle together? You've got all of these pieces. Why can't you assemble the puzzle? I literally don't understand it. I literally don't know how you can know all of this and then yet not seem to know anything. And so in this analysis, I want to review 10 insights that make sense of Lucy Letby and her murderous motives. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, I've done quite a lot of analysis when this case is actually happening. So I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. So look out for that, the playlist, and a couple of other recommendations. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button and let's get started. Right, so 10 insights that make sense of Lucy Letby and her murderous motives. I think the way to do this is to look at Lucy across 3 dimensions. 4, if we include just this idea of 2 Lucys, in other words, Lucy's double life. That's really the first dimension. The second is the dimension in terms of how she expresses herself, in terms of her bedroom, her notebook, her writings, her texts, and her own incriminating statements. Thirdly, through what others have said about her. And finally, what the evidence shows. And what we want to do is maintain a contiguous psychological thread. Almost look at all of these dimensions as kind of continents of psychology, and do they sort of align with one another in a sense. And because we want that puzzle, once assembled, to resonate with a kind of authentic continuity. Does that make sense? So let's go to the first dimension. Number 1, double life. There are 2 sides to all of us. There's a public side and a private side, and that is how it should be.
Your aunt's a very lucky woman, Angelica, because she has 2 lives. She has the life she's leading, also the book she's writing.
These 2 sides are normal and healthy. Some aspects of ourselves are necessarily public, such as our working life, and other parts are necessarily and appropriately private. That's normal, as I say, but it's also a potential recipe for abnormalities to the extent to which you need to hide away parts of your private life. There's a difference between private things being private and hiding them away, and dark things that shouldn't be happening to begin with. I mean, they're hidden, but they shouldn't be happening anyway. And so you might have aberrations and worse, especially when we start to dwell in private cesspools and are somehow, if you spend too much time in the sort of private hell, whatever you want to call it, and you are somehow then led astray from proper mores and norms further and further into taboos and moral malaise. When our life becomes a lie, our entire life, we're in trouble.
Each living a lie.
And this is what Lucy did in terms of her private life. She was living a lie. And if you can't see that, you're not going to be able to see really anything. And so let me just ask a simple question. Which of these photos is Lucy Letby? It's not one or the other, but both. They are both Lucy. In a nutshell, when the schism, the split between the public face and the private face of a person, when it's so great that many of us find it either unrecognizable or incomprehensible, even irreconcilable, then you're dealing with an individual who has put a lot of work into hiding, deceiving, and pretending. And they may have even sort of gotten lost in their lie, this lie that is their lives. And it might be difficult for them even to reconcile these different parts of themselves. Let's be clear, all of us have a dark side. Most people have a dark side that's not very different, not very dissimilar from the side that the world sees. Some people have a secret life that is relatively benign, and perhaps the secret side isn't particularly intense or extreme. It's when the double life is very different, so different that the individual feels they have to pretend and manipulate in order to control people's perceptions of them. I mean, in order to prevent outsiders from intuiting this radically separate other side of themselves. It might be a very sick or twisted side to themselves, which they know is not just inappropriate, but worse.
Worse, actually.
Sometimes that dark side is unethical, sometimes it's immoral, but in Lucy's case, diabolical. It's not healthy for a person to be this two-sided and for so much energy to be diverted into control, into controlling others' perceptions of them, into these efforts to wear masks and deception. And that brings us to the second dimension. And this is how Lucy presents herself. And the first thing we're going to look at is her bedroom. What do you see when you look at this picture? In a very real sense, a bedroom is a portrait of a person. In fact, Vincent van Gogh actually drew a bedroom, and in a real sense, that is a picture of him and his life. And that is true for many of us as well. Your bedroom is your personal space. What do you see when you look at that picture? Well, what I see is immaturity. This looks to me like the bedroom of a child, perhaps a 12-year-old. It doesn't look like the sleeping quarters of a 25 and 26-year-old. It doesn't look like the bedroom of someone with an active sex life. And think about it, 25 and 26, that was Lucy's age when she committed serial murder. Notice the teddy bears on the bed and on the pillow. Notice the vacuous vanilla aphorisms on the wall. Notice the jumble of neither here nor there simplicity. You don't really get a sense of who this person is. It's all vanilla and kind of childish. And this is what Lucy was struggling with, her meek, feeble sense of self. Like her bedroom, she's nondescript, unexceptional, ordinary. And by her mid-20s, this was eating her up because she wanted more. She wanted to be more. She wanted to be seen, but she didn't know how. And that brings us to number 3, notebook. And we need to deal with her reading matter as well, which is beside her bedside table. I'll get to that in a moment. But first, her notebook. Do you still think we're not dealing with a sentimental, hollow vessel? Do you still think we're dealing with someone who's mature? Well, in the same way that she was coddled as a child, she wants to be coddled as an adult. The hastily scribbled post-its are the sort of thing teenagers do during dramatic tantrums about existential crisis. Number 4, incriminating statements. There's a saying, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. In the same article about following the trial for 10 months, the journalist meeting Lucy's best friend at school says something like, the only way I'd ever believe that she's guilty is if Lucy tells me she's guilty. Now, we'll deal with Dawn in more detail in a moment, but, when she says, the only way I'd believe that she's guilty if she tells me, well, yet Lucy, accused of murder, writes, I am evil, I did this. It's at the bottom of this green post-it in all caps. I am evil, I did this. Somehow that doesn't qualify as her telling me she's guilty. I guess, so if she's telling herself she's guilty, then that doesn't count. Anyway, I guess there are some who support the Amanda Knox school of true crime, which is when you confess to something, it means you didn't confess to something. In a very basic human sense, have you ever been accused of murder? Have you ever been accused of multiple murder, and then you wrote a note saying that you did it? I mean, alone by yourself in your own bedroom. There's no duress, it's just you scribbling on a piece of paper. Have you ever done that? Have you ever confessed to murdering anyone? I haven't. What do you think she means when she says, I want someone to help me, but they can't? And this again is a test of your intuition and your ability to fathom another human being. Are you able to? It's near the bottom of this yellow post-it. Do you think she means, when she says someone, do you think she means anyone? I think it means someone in particular. And I think there's someone she wants to help her that can't help is because he's married. It's a specific someone. And he can't help because there's a danger of what people might think or say if he does help, And help her in the way that she wants to be helped. Now, if you can't see that Lucy was in love with her doctor colleague, then I guess you can't read English, because in this note she writes, "My best friend, love, I loved you, and I think you knew that. I wanted you to stand by me, but you didn't." Is there psychological continuity between "I wanted you to stand by me, but you didn't," and that is written in one note, and "I want someone to help me, but they can't," and that's written in another? Think about those words. "I wanted you to stand by me, but you didn't," and "I want someone to help me, but they can't." Well, I think there is, and that brings us to the third dimension, what others saw and thought. Lucy denied that she had feelings for her doctor colleague. This is in spite of text messages that record the fact that someone observed them to be flirting with one another. And when was this happening? When the murders were taking place. It's not just at some point. And so this is the 2nd of June 2016. Lucy Letby had strange message from Dr. A earlier, colleague. "Did you?" Saying what? "Go commando." Asking when I was working next week, as wants to talk to me about something. Has a favor to ask. Colleague. "Think he likes you too. Did you not ask what it was?" Lucy. "No, just said when I was working and he said, wants my opinion on something. Do you think he's being odd?" Colleague. "Thought as flirty as you." Lucy. "Shut up." Colleague. "What?" The colleague observing, "I think he likes you too," is an indirect reference to her knowledge, her insight, that Lucy likes him. Number 6, Lucy becoming emotional in court. When her doctor colleague spoke in court, Lucy became so emotional, she stood up in tears and wanted to leave the court. Everyone saw this. And Lucy later claimed that she loved the doctor, but only as a friend. The BBC journalist, to her credit, observed that Lucy only seemed to get emotional when she spoke about herself. And I think this is an important psychological insight. Lucy felt sorry for herself, more sorry than she felt for the babies in her care, the babies that were lost in her care. This also came up in court, that Lucy unusually appeared to be trying to solicit sympathy by her acts and in her communications. According to Sky News, "The reason you tell us lies is to get sympathy from people," Mr. Johnson later said. "No," Letby responded. Mr. Johnson then said, "Killing these children, you got quite a lot of attention." "I didn't kill these children," Letby replied. "You're getting quite a lot of attention now, aren't you?" In other words, this supports the notion that of someone who can't stop feeling sorry for herself. And why does she feel sorry for herself? Because she's a lovelorn singleton exposed often to a flurry of happy couples in the brush and glow of early family life. It was this life that was passing her by, and over time she started to desperately want it, pine for it, but she didn't know how to solve it. She didn't know how to make that happen, and that is what goes to motive. She felt so sorry for herself that her feeling sorry for herself trumped all. She was prepared to do anything to try and change the situation. Look at this headline. Attention-seeking Letby had crush on doctor colleague, court heard. Obviously, Lucy would strenuously deny her true feelings for the doctor, because to admit it goes to motive. And if she admitted that, she'd implicate herself. On literally every single occasion when there was an incident with a baby, wasn't the doctor also on duty, and didn't these emergencies summon him to Lucy's ward? Look at this headline from 14 September 2024. Staff at Lucy Letby's hospital were concerned that a doctor had been on shift at the time of many of the deaths and collapses of babies. Number 7, Lucy wasn't popular. And this is an insight we get from Dawn, that they spent lunchtimes away from the popular kids. They weren't popular, so they didn't have social agency. So we see Lucy wasn't popular at school, and certainly in terms of the opposite sex, didn't seem popular outside of school either. Let me ask you a question. Is there one photo of Lucy with some guy? Is there one boyfriend that we know of that Lucy had? According to the Mirror, among colleagues, she was known as the quiet geek. As a way of defending herself that she wasn't having an affair, Lucy claimed to have a mystery boyfriend, but he was never identified. And it was never made clear if this boyfriend was the same person as her married colleague, because no previous partners were mentioned during the trial. It's a pity this part wasn't clarified. At a time in her life when young women tend to be in relationships, Lucy wasn't. And bear in mind, the neonatal unit presents very intimate family situations, new couples with newborns. And Lucy would have seen these again and again and again, and probably compared herself and her situation, cue that single bed in her bedroom, to a revolving door of happy couples. When was it going to be her turn? Lucy's problem was that she lacked social currency, lacked social agency, and was so desperate to cheat her way out of her debacle, which is basically involuntary singledom, I guess, that she killed babies to basically get the sort of attention she felt she needed from one particular individual. This doesn't make much sense to most people, because most people don't struggle to have relationships and wouldn't go to these lengths to get someone's attention. But if you acknowledge that this was the case for Lucy, then that is the beginning of understanding her and her motive. The key isn't to compare any of this to yourself and your standards and your background and what you've done and how you get attention. The key is to see Lucy as a different animal, and above all, a lonely animal. Very lonely, not a little bit lonely, very lonely, specifically in the relationship sense. And I think each time she saw these happy couples, she felt wounded, which is why she didn't mind wounding them to get her piece of the happy pie, the piece that she felt she was entitled to. Number 8, Lucy wasn't as sweet as she seemed. In court, her double act crumbled. She started well. She's even described as cocky at one point. But as her lies were exposed, she became increasingly feeble and meek. In other words, the real Lucy emerged. The temerity to commit murder comes from a broader entitlement that I personally suspect came from a coddled upbringing, an upbringing that made her feel that she was entitled to exceptional treatment, and she was entitled to take exceptional action. And if she didn't get it, by gum, she'd wangle things so that she did. But there are also other signs that Lucy had a few screws loose. According to the BBC, she disagreed with established nursing guidelines, disagreed with senior doctors, disagreed with medical experts. There were even moments when she tried to outsmart Johnson. Those never ended well. The prosecutor picked holes in her testimony, pointing out the differences between what she told police after her arrest and what she was saying in court. He found examples of her disagreeing with herself, highlighting evidence she had previously agreed and was now disputing. "You're lying, aren't you?" Lucy Letby had asked her. "You enjoyed what was going on, didn't you?" Lucy Letby. "No," she'd answer meekly. It was clear he was getting to her. The defendant's delivery started to change. She became staccato and monosyllabic. Her voice level dropped to a whisper, and even though I was just a few meters away, it was becoming harder and harder to hear her. This is the nondescript nonentity, the ordinary, invisible girl that Lucy was trying and failing to put behind her, coming to the fore once more. And that brings us to the fourth dimension, evidence. Lucy's trial lasted 10 months, one of the longest trials to ever take place in England. Did it take 10 months because there was no evidence, or because there was a lot of evidence? Now remember what we asked at the outset. Was this comment about outside of our concerns, right, outside of work, was that a reference to her alleged affair? It turns out, and this is a fact, during 3 months in 2016, Lucy sent over 1,300 Facebook messages to her doctor friend. That's an average of 15 messages a day, every single day, for 3 consecutive months. You really think that that was just a casual relationship? In her room, Lucy was evidently reading a book called Never Greener. Any guesses what it was about? It was about a young woman who had an affair with a married man. And that brings us to number 10, and this is the most important point, green with envy. And that, in a nutshell, was Lucy's problem. She was green with envy, envious of the happy young couples in the flush of new homes, newborns, and new adventures. And she wanted that same thing herself. She was green in terms of being a complete amateur when it came to relationships. Never mind getting married and having a baby, she literally couldn't even have just like a simple relationship, and she knew it. And, looking at this picture of Lucy with intuition isn't so much about what you or I see when we look at Lucy, but what did Lucy see? when she looked at herself in the mirror? How did she see herself? Well, I see someone with low self-esteem. And I think she saw someone who was also weak and pathetic and not good enough. And she mentions these words in the post-its. And yet I think she was also someone who aspired and desired and needed, just like all of us. But she didn't know how to fulfill those desires. And some people don't. And so in her darkness, she started to cheat and deceive. And that is how she became an angel of death. Does that make sense? Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.